Trump is the perfect example of the pendulum, right? I mean, if you go too far one way, when you pull the kind of the weight too far one way, even when everyone realizes it's too far one way and it should be hanging in the middle, no, it doesn't come and just sit in the middle. It swings back the opposite way, right? And so you get these equal opposite dynamics. We have amazing technology, which we can call weapons, tools, all those things. And then we have good and bad actors. And we do not, just because we've got this tremendous tool, doesn't change the fact that there are extremely bad actors out there that will use it for bad outcomes.
Welcome to Influential Visions. Here we interview futuristic leaders who share their deep industry knowledge and business experience with you, ensuring you have your finger on the pulse and your eyes wide open. Here is your host, Nathaniel Schooler.
I'm very privileged today to be joined by Michael Tobin, OBE, and Stephen J. Manning. There's a lot going on. We've got lots of global tariffs going on, obviously, with what's happening. There's a lot of free speech issues, certainly within the UK right now, and people are being arrested. I mean, from the stuff I seem to read, I could be completely wrong, but there are lots and lots of people being arrested for all sorts of different things that they've basically said online over the past few years. And that's kind of interesting, but it's also kind of worrying because I like to speak online, but I think perhaps maybe I'm a little bit more careful than most people. I don't know. But I think it's great to have you both here. Looking forward to a good conversation. And yeah, I mean, perhaps we start on the politics side of things. What do you think, Mike, about what's going on in terms of politics and global business?
In terms of the tariffs, I mean, look, there's some logic in tariffs, right? Because in the picture that he's trying to paint, he's saying, well, I'm creating a better environment for American jobs by making it easier stroke cheaper for Americans to buy American products versus products that we import from somewhere else. So I can understand that as a concept. I think the challenge over the medium to long term on this is, yes, we're seeing tit for tat wars, which doesn't really help anybody. But more than that, it starts to erode the competitive disciplines and nature of US companies if they don't have to compete with foreign potential competitors and don't have sort of the latest and greatest technologies and principles and styles to live up to, right? So if you're simply creating a protectionist environment where you have no capability of being competed with from external, I believe in the medium term it starts to make companies flabby. And so, then I think prices eventually go up with those companies because they're less inclined to worry about being competitive. And ultimately, the end user has to pay for all this, right? So I can understand the concept of it being sort of the right thing for the country, in this case, that Trump represents. But I think it needs to be a little bit more disciplined and a little bit more thought through, and I don't think there's anyone thinking through this particular wave of tariffs.
That's an interesting perspective. I can understand that, actually. So what do you think about that then, Steve? About the situation at the moment?
Well, I'm not going to take issue with what Michael said. With your kind permission, color it a little bit. Otherwise, we're not going to have a discourse. I think that from a macro perspective, hard to challenge creating equity in trade balances. The United States hasn't had a trade surplus in 50 years. The reality is that we created the whole tariff world after World War II, and it was entirely perverse. How do you spend your wealth by creating wealth elsewhere? This is something that very smart people have written a million words on. Now, to seek equality, I think as a concept is a good thing. Two aspects of it. The nut behind the wheel driving this is the one that we need to consider what he does and how he does it and what the ultimate outcome might be. And then competition, which of course creates everything downstream from competition is a good thing for the consumer. We've been thriving here in this incredible country on competition since our birth. There are sufficient number of people that believe that we have enough internal competition not to seek it elsewhere. There are, it's something that I talk about is when do the entrepreneurial spirit, get up in the morning, don't consider failure an option, succeed. When you wake up in the morning in the United States of America and you stand in front of that mirror, brushing your teeth or whatever, and you have the eureka moment, you have the concept, the idea, your next wealth generating idea. You can be 100% certain there's 1,000 other people doing it among these 360, so 50, whatever number of us, million of us are there. And among them, there are some that have the means, the opportunity, the willingness, and the pure gumption, just go do it. And while you get dressed, you go back to work and you find the same stuff you left there the night before, and you are sidetracked. Now, but we do create tremendous amount of competition in this country. People are always trying to come up with another ice cream flavor. And if they can't come up with it, they'll come up with a different chocolate. We now have Peruvian blah, blah chocolate sold in an Italian creamery. Okay, that was somebody's brilliant idea. And 1 out of a million of those actually catches on. As it relates to the process, because ultimately the process will drive this. I wrote much about the Reagan years. And I wrote a thing that says, now, we had wonderful years during the Reagan years. Ronald Reagan, or should I say Nancy, the de facto president, ran the country on 3x5 card concepts. This concept fits in here. And you know what? On short term, that's a really grand idea. But to be sure, the complexity ultimately manifests itself and the bad stuff shows up. Right now, by the way, there's one time in history where that actually happened and happened in an amazing scale for many years, was in Chile, the Chilean experience with Pinochet, which we can talk about sometime. The only time a country ran by 3x5 cards and achieved greatness in short term. Right now, Donald Trump is everything you think he is. He is a New York builder fundamentally. Throwing these bomblets out there without total, as you say, without total thought through is massive, is dangerous and risky. However, if the fundamental concept is sound enough, it may succeed. Oh, by the way, tit for tat, it's absurd from the get-go. It's a half a story. Okay, no tariffs between us. Good. You try to import a California car into half of Europe. Not going to happen. Okay, I know, I've been there, tried that. So, but this, we send this boulder down the hill, picks up speed, and people want to get out of the way. Now, can you spell sabotage? Can you spell neglect? Can you spell clever people? Say, okay, good, no more tariffs, but that string needs to be 2.4 inches, not 2.3. See ya. So there is a reckoning to this. And the reckoning has to come sooner than later, and it will. Last night, 70 countries are trying to schedule, think of this, trying to schedule appointments to come to Washington to discuss tariffs. Now, I find that amusing. Or is it tragic? It's Shakespearean one way or another. I think I answered your question. But it's phenomenal to watch. This kind of gambit at this scale, I don't think it's ever been done before. Okay. And if it wasn't for this incredible massive engine here, the American economy, it would have been the dumbest thing a quote world leader could possibly do. How do you launch a weapon without a guidance system? That's kind of the way, to some extent, I see it. I'm looking forward to it. And to some extent, I have to confess, it's kind of cool to know that 70 countries are coming hand in hand saying, please. Of course, creating a trade war with the United States of America is akin to running out naked on the freeway. It's a little dumb. How is that going to work out? How can that possibly work out? Don't people understand that the singly greatest the reason for the growth of this country in nano time, a couple hundred years, two, we never fought a big old war here, and two, we actually have every resource we need to survive. If that is not an argument for isolationism, nothing is. So, we can survive. We can survive. Things are out of balance, but they'll regain balance. I also happen to believe that in most things political, even economics to a lesser degree, there's always a regression to the mean. You may disagree. We explore the pendulum swing to the right. We explore it to the left. Some extremes, which we're seeing two ways in the last just year, at some point it does regress to mean. Otherwise, society blows itself
away.
up.
I'm just smiling away here because Michael talks a lot about the pendulum as well. We've spoken a lot about that over the last 10 years, 8 years, when we've done interviews, and both of you talk about this pendulum. What do you think on that then, Mike, and where we are right now with all of this?
Well, Trump is the perfect example of the pendulum, right? I mean, if you go too far one way, when you pull the kind of the weight up too far one way, even when everyone realizes it's too far one way and it should be hanging in the middle, no, it doesn't come and just sit in the middle. It swings back the opposite way, right? And so you get these equal opposite dynamics where there's a reaction to what you've had before. And I think the world has probably gone too woke, too conciliatory, to multiple different dynamics. But I think there's a fear of offending anybody by doing anything. There's a fear of people can't expect to be kind of immune to their feelings being offended, right? Because that's an occupational hazard of life, right? We all have opinions and we all have to live in a world of different people. So when you have a world that goes so far that people have the rights to call themselves whatever they want, they identify as whatever they want, they expect, which is fine, by the way, as far as I'm concerned, but then they expect other people's lives to change as a result of that. When those people then lose their rights to be who they are, then I think that is a swing of the pendulum about to come, right? That you're going to get a sort of a reaction, an equally strong reaction to that. And I think the way that Trump sees the world is that people have been taking advantage, other countries have been taking advantage of the US for some time, and that he wants to address that balance. And I think the pendulum has gone naturally too far, but that's as I said, it's not unexpected. It's part and parcel of what the pendulum does, and there'll be an equal and opposite reaction the other way, but probably less pronounced, but it'll eventually settle down in the middle somewhere. And I think the fact that he's accepting people coming into the US for these meetings suggests that a lot of this is tactics. He's one can call him many names, but actually, he is a negotiator. That's his life, right? He'll negotiate for every single thing, and he's worked out what works and what doesn't work in negotiation. And his attitude is, throw the bomb out there and then get people to come in and say, can you put the pin back in, please? Rather than saying, if you don't do this, I will throw the bomb. So, it's a tactic for negotiation. So we'll see where that goes. But in the meantime, there's a lot of painful fallout for a lot of people around the world. Stock markets are on the floor. People's savings have been decimated. All these sorts of things. But that's his choice as the most powerful man in the world at the moment. He can write the rule book. And it's certainly different to what anyone else has done in my lifetime anyway.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, because there are all these other things that he actually wants from all of these countries. I mean, for example, he wants the UK to have free speech, right? So basically, as part of his negotiations with the UK, from what I've heard, from what I've seen on social media, this is part of his tactic, right? So it's like, okay, we're going to give you these tariffs, and actually you want an even keel, then you need to throw this in as well, because it actually represents a shared value system that we at least thought we shared, which I find quite it's quite disturbing, really, where we are right now, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know. You live in the UK, Mike, so I don't live there.
I think
For
we've
me,
lost. I
it
think we've
feels
lost
different.
free speech in the UK. I think, you know, in particular with the current government, the Labour government, it's more draconian than any that I've seen in a very, very long time. And you know, if you can stand silently and internally pray about something and be arrested outside of an abortion clinic or something, doing nothing other than standing there with your eyes closed, internally praying, not saying a word, and yet you can have anywhere in the world, you can anywhere in the country, you can have someone you know, put a prayer mat out and be praying to their God about whatever they want to be praying about, and they're fine. I think that's a very difficult thing to legislate for, right? And I'm not sure how Trump is going to kind of measure the change in that, measure the kind of free speech adjustment that needs to happen in the UK. But if you say something that people don't like, then you get arrested here. And that's absolutely true. It's just not, you know, it's worse than Dubai.
Well, I think that's outrageous as it is conceptually absurd.
Yeah.
If I may, 2 comments. Trump, because after all, he is a New York builder for everything that is. Trump is not a champion of causing regime change elsewhere. He's often quoted probably saying, well, they do what they do, and it's what they're going to do. That's not my game. My game is I want that for $10 instead of 12. He is not a champion of changing regime change. He may talk about free speech, and at the end of the day, somebody creates a piece of legislation which goes somewhere, nowhere in the UK, trying to champion regaining some free speech, and Trump will say, "Fine, they're working on it." Now let's talk about some British-made product. I believe that to be the case. Now, you know, Michael, to legislate what people think, how they feel, is certainly draconian. As you said, it's very medieval. But then, so we have we used to have the enlightened Europeans, the socially enlightened Brits and Europeans, and us poor toothless cousins here in Arkansas. Now, what is happening in the United States as it relates to free speech? Now, just a sentence of background. I came to this country as a homeless immigrant in my teens. Now, I came from an oppressive, tyrannical government where my dad had a job. His job was to feed 25 million people. That doesn't mean they didn't torture him once a year for his views. So I came to this country understanding what's being outspoken is. And the man was a hardcore resistant to the government that we lived, and yet he's had the biggest job in industry, if you will. But it took me years until I could look at a police officer and see someone's good for me. So free speech for me developed slowly to where I said, and I began to understand it. I began to really, truly enjoy it. And today, speaking of pendulums, my pendulum is vibrating in the wrong place. Now, free speech in America, if I may, it used to be a cornerstone, what we call American democracy, which now begins to defy definition, what the heck it is. And I thought that it was based on, time, state, places, non-equivocating stuff, non-situational ethicals. It's free speech. You speak what you believe. Now, there's the rub. We have come to a place where free speech is really a battleground. I mean, all these shrieking voices clashing over ideas esoterical stuff, ethereal stuff, garbage, and they are seeking to express their truth. Someone smart will one day explain to me what somebody's truth is, rather than the absolute truth. We've come to a place in America where free speech is defined in California school system as 2 plus 2 is not necessarily 4. It is a different number based on this incredible assault on ultimately free speech. You know, free speech in America has become, I don't know, something of a social political nuisance. You know, it's like we're balancing what? Balancing discourse? Oh, I think that is green, you think is blue. Today, the social mores, the screaming fanatics think blue is better than green. Therefore, we're going to silence you. Now, we don't have a law that says we're going to come into your house and arrest you, but we have mobs. They're paid, by and large. They're unwashed and paid. There's 2 classes who will tell you that since you believe it's green, you should not have that job. Your tenure just got revoked. And guess what? Amazon will pull your last book off the shelves. Now, if that's not medieval assault on free speech, not quite as obvious, overt, and ugly as you're experiencing in the UK and elsewhere. I lived in a world where you closed the blinds and the shades and sit in the middle of the room when you were talking politics with friends, because your neighbor would turn you in. And, you know, I've been there as a kid with my dad. I've been there. I saw it in my own head. Well, my father was a dissident by every definition of the word, and yet he had the biggest job in industry in Romania. But you know what? He paid a terrible price for being outspoken. Today, I'm looking at you now pay a social, political, and economic price for being outspoken if you happen to be wrong side of that silly pendulum.
Yeah, okay? No, I think for me, right, it's about, like, I don't mind what people are perfectly entitled to have whatever opinion they have and say whatever they want to say, as long as it doesn't offend or change my position, right? And if somebody wants to call blue orange, that's okay. It's orange to them. That's fine. But when they start to tell me I must call it orange, that's when
then we have a total disconnect.
Exactly. So if someone identifies as a cat, right, which is happening in our schools,
happening here,
and when the teacher says, you can't be a cat, don't be stupid, then the teacher gets fired, right, for not respecting the identity wishes of that individual. Fine, we'll go and drink milk from a saucer in the corner on the floor, right? And when you come out of university, don't expect any qualifications. Right?
Well, you know, but you see, the problem I have, being somewhat opinionated and outspoken and not a wallflower, is a couple days ago, we ran into a woman that my wife is somewhat friendly with, which I question. My wife is a very smart woman. And I said to her, how can you possibly be in the same space with that person? Woman has an MBA from Stanford. And she said, hey, how you doing? Of course. She is such a virulent Trump hater. It's astounding. Cloudy eyes. And you can say anything you want. You can tell me, you can offend me. You can say, hey, you sleep with goats. But the woman said something, and I in my little mind, I said, the woman's educated. She has a social position. And she said this. And in my little mind, the process was, she's entitled to opinion, however absurd, stupid, offensive it is. And I said, wait a minute, it's offending me. It's offending whatever intellect I may have. So I looked at this woman and I said, do you happen to recall when you sustained irreversible brain damage? Now, I thought to some extent, that's how I feel. I might have been amusing. And then my wife said, as we left, you realize we're never going to have lunch with those people again. Okay, but it's, to me, free speech, as I said, I came late to free speech, and therefore I behold it You can say anything you want, as you said. You can say anything you want, as long as you don't impose that on me. Okay.
And I think,
no,
one can be, one cannot be offended by someone. One can only be offended by oneself, right? So if words come at you, right, they're just words. It's just signals in the air. There's nothing, right? A physical attack is something else. But words, only yourself can interpret that and create anger within yourself or being offended, because you are applying value to the person. And if you think that the person's like ignorant or even more, the reason you should ignore what they say, or at least say, well, thank you for your opinion, but that ain't my opinion. So, I think we should not be offended by what someone else says. We should be taking it and saying, all right, if I'm going to learn something, I might. If I think it's nonsense, it's also nonsense. But only I have the power to create offended in my brain.
Well, I agree, but let us stipulate that you are different than the masses. Okay, let's just agree to that. I'm not trying to be nice to you because I don't like you that much, but you have capacity beyond most, and you can assess value to things around you that are different than the masses. So one of the things that Nathaniel proposed is, what all this speech stuff? How do people get triggered? Somebody smart wrote the thing about sticks and stones may hurt me, but words. Well, the reality today is that's not true, because words now cause hurt, cause pain. In fact, they cause societal change. It's a wonderful thing to exchange an email or whatever with a good friend of mine who's a world-class economist, academic, and it's great when he writes 3 pages, which I don't comprehend because he's just much more than I am, and I write back, I just disagree. I think you need rest. Now I get 9 pages. I'm hysterical. He's perturbed. Now, we live in a different plateau without a doubt. Intellectually, we do. But I look at what triggers people. It's incredible. The shrieking of voices right, left, and sideways. And unfortunately, masses are in fact given to mass behavior. And the words trigger. And it's an astounding thing. I mean, how often, of course, of my writing day or week or month, think about Goebbels? Now, good God, man, I think about Goebbels. My parents are Holocaust survivors, but Goebbels said something brilliant. You say something often enough, loud enough, people will believe it. And unfortunately, being our educational system being so devalued in this country, hey man, we create wonderful doctors, lawyers, engineers. Everyone else cannot possibly be a French intellectual. We just get through the day. We accept crap coming our way all the time. Hey, I watch right-wing television, you watch left-wing television. The twain never meet an intellectual plateau. That, forgive the ordinary conclusion here, we are screwed if that's the way it is.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, the masses, this is why I think democracy, whilst it's probably the best we have, is fundamentally flawed, because, when we talk about the average voter, well, there is no average voter, right? I mean, you can sit half a dozen people in a room and we can debate every manifesto of every potential electoral candidate and have an informed debate and and at the end of it, we all have one vote. Or we can just go down the bar and get really drunk, and whatever comes up on the screen with Sky News or whatever, we take that and we'll still have a vote, right? And I think, if at the very least we could have an exit poll that validates whatever you voted for by simply answering a multiple choice on health, education, welfare, defense, and what did you just vote for? And it doesn't matter what you voted for. right? But just confirm that you actually know what you just voted for, then it validates the vote. And I think that would make people a lot more thoughtful on the implications of what's going to happen, right? But at the moment, because we're a democracy, every one of these masses that are at different levels of intelligence or capability, and I don't mean intelligence necessarily of how much you know, it just simply, school of life even, they need to understand what the value and the cost and implication of a vote is. And I'm not sure the vast majority of the electorate necessarily do.
Michael, I'm certainly not a social scientist, but thinking about democracy, as you said, whilst it is what it is, it's the best we have. And there's some fundamentals to it that if you allow yourself, you end up on the wrong side of supporting democracy. You're talking about the one who vote. The masses have the same vote you have. Their thinking process are fundamentally very different. They're much more subsistence level, if you wish, or they are easily triggered. It's interesting. I had this discussion with a lawyer of all things who said to me, well, jury of your peers. I said, stop. I said, oh, what do you mean? Your peers, people in the community, your peers. And I said, did you really get a degree? You went to prestigious law school. Did you really? So you don't know where that came from? Well, it's just people from community. We have Wadir, and then do you really think you're going to find a pool of people in the West End of London that can honestly and smartly adjudicate a matter involving some intellectual thing that Michael Tobin did? The answer is no. You can hope and pray for a smart judge who doesn't fall asleep. But the jury of his peers, and by the way, do you know where peers came from? Well, peers came from peerage. We had ancestors, you had ancestors, because it comes from you guys. You guys are at fault for everything, that believed that poor peasant standing in front of a judge cannot get a free trial, and his peers going to hang him, as opposed to the peers in the community who are thought to be smarter, better, much better informed, and have a much more sage approach to life. Democracy is a manifestation of that, where, hey, how the hell do you know what I feel, how I feel, and why I did what I did? Unless you can identify with me. We have taken that to the absurd here, where it's a social construct that's created sometimes a spur of the moment. And most of the extreme social constructs, which manifest themselves politically, economically, and so on, are actually fundamentally just plain wrong, or they are literally equity plays. We have seen bloodshed on the streets, mayhem on the streets, fundamentally ended up being a money play, disguised as a social thing.
I've got to interrupt you. It's really interesting when some of the smartest people are actually so triggered and so blinkered in their opinions that they will not do any more research. They won't even consider that their opinion perhaps is wrong and what they're following is wrong. And actually, this is part of the problem that we have. I know some super smart people on both sides of the of the political parties, right? In fact, I don't know anyone that actually supports UK Labour, really. If I'm brutally honest, no one that I know actually likes the current situation with what's going on over there, and it is deeply worrying with that right now. I'm very worried about it.
Well, now I tell you,
and the state of Europe.
You say that you don't know anyone that obviously. So in last year, the vote, right, was considered a landslide for Labour. Right, 80% of the electoral register did not vote for Labour. Right, and if you then add in the absolute population of the UK, it means that Labour was actually voted for by about 11% of the population of the United Kingdom. right? They have 61% of the seats in the equivalent of our Senate, the UK Parliament. So it's 61% majority, of which they probably had 11% of the population and 20% of the electoral population, right? And that since then, they've lost virtually all of that because of their disastrous policies and disastrous decisions in the 6 months they've been in power. So when you think about democracy, those are the facts.
That's as far as you can get from democracy.
Shocking. But also, sorry, I've got something else to say. But also about the lady in France who's just been jailed for mismanaging funds, right? I mean, we're probably going to end up having these right wing. I mean, I hate to use the term right wing, but it's the only nationalist kind of parties, right? And actually, potentially, the pendulum has to go there in order to fix this broken system of immigration. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. But perhaps the media has just convinced me that there is a huge immigration problem, and that actually I'm the one that's wrong. Maybe I am wrong. What do you think, Mike, on the immigration side of things over there?
Well, I think immigration generally is a good thing. I think that. I certainly like the UK to be as multicultural as possible, but I also want people to come in in a legal way and work for their entitlements, right? And be respectful of local law and order, and not come in and try to impose different ways of life and different structures on other people that are already settled. I'm very happy that they come in with culture and different culture, and as long as they respect everyone else having their culture, that's fine. As long as they work to generate income taxes that pays for the services they receive for free, right? It's never for free because someone's paying for it. Then I'm happy with immigration, and I like diversity, right? But I'm not happy with people coming across who are fleeing so-called persecution, and they've already gone through 7 perfectly stable, safe countries to get to the coast of France, and then risk their life in a boat to get to the UK, throw their passports overboard so they can't be returned to their country of origin, simply because they see free NHS, free services in the UK as the nirvana of what they want to achieve in life.
I think it's I couldn't summarize it any better, Michael. I think it's astounding. Culture diversity is wonderful. It's just great. It's life is better for us, the natives, if you will. But you can't come into the UK or France or anywhere and bring your own culture and repudiate the host country and absolutely refuse any need to assimilate. And not only do you not feel a need to, in fact, you outright reject it. Have you been in Sweden lately? Mm-hmm. Conversation for another time. I witnessed something in Sweden that I never, ever thought in my lifetime I would see. But conversation for another time. You're welcome. Now, I know what we went through to become permanent residents and citizens of this country. It was a nightmare, man, and it years. But it's cool. Now, we have a body of laws here. You have in the UK. They have in Sweden. It's not okay to have a medium-sized city that is no longer patrolled by the police, has its own set of laws, and has its own culture, its own courts that originate 8,000 miles away. That's not okay. That does not benefit the society in total. In fact, it creates divisiveness. And that is what we achieved in this country, both from an immigration standpoint and from a political standpoint, certainly a social standpoint. We have created this incredible downward vortex of divisiveness and angst and violence to boot. It's not okay to be part of an external immigrant group in the UK or anywhere else and then defend your laws, your own laws, at the expense of your host country. That's just not going to work out, because you will become unwelcome, and there'll be blood, literally or proverbially, on the street. That level of discontent erodes the fabric of the society.
Well, we have, as an example, right, we have around 80 known Sharia courts in the UK at the moment, right? And these are courts that run parallel and different to the UK legal system, and are funded by donations. They're funded by mosques. They're funded by environments which want the independence of judiciary removed from the UK system. And their laws are very different. Some of them are similar, mainly very different. But what it means is that when someone believes that he's acting according to a set of rules that are alien to that country, right, and feels that he has not committed a crime because he's looking at his own court system, then this is a recipe for disaster, both for them as individuals and for the population in general. And the court system, whilst massively imperfect as far as I'm aware, what it tries to do is to protect the masses from the individual, and to protect the individual from the masses. And it can only work if everyone understands what the rules are.
Yeah, it's deeply worrying, the situation there, and that should just be stamped right out. I mean, it's actually quite crazy that nothing that I've heard of is being done about that, and that's what's such a surprise. I mean, literally, I appreciate, that you might have to break some things in order to fix these things, but at the end of the day, something needs to happen. But let's move on to something really positive before we wrap up. What do you think about kind of the opportunities that are out there in the world right now, both of you guys? Starting with Mike, if you don't mind. I mean, from where I'm sitting, I see there's masses of opportunity right now within technology, most certainly, and within business itself.
Yeah,
right?
I think AI, we've only just scratched the surface, but I mean, AI isn't new for a start, right? If you've had a calculator in your pocket for the last 30 years, you've been using AI of a sort. And if you open your phone with facial recognition, or if you have voice recognition when you're talking to your banker, then all of this is AI, and we know and love it in those contexts. And suddenly we fear it because there's deep fakes and it's going to cost us jobs and blah blah. But in actual fact, every evolution of technology from way back has generated more jobs than it's eroded. So there'll be a shift in jobs, right? But I think in the immediate term, it's not a job loss dynamic, but I do think people using AI will outperform people not using AI. So I think, embracing it will create more value for the employed community than not. But I think the things that the biggest challenge that I see is human creativity and invent. The fact, what can we do with AI rather than trying to add 10% efficiency using AI. So, it's like most people I know go onto ChatGPT and say, how do I do this 10% faster? How do I do it 10% cheaper? Whereas they should be saying, how do I not need to do this again? Right. And if you can get an engagement with AI that completely fundamentally changes a process or a system, the world's going to be a super exciting place going forward.
Yeah, I agree. So what do you think, Steve? Are you excited about opportunities right now for people who are willing to get stuck in and learn new things and stuff?
I got first excited about AI in, I think, 1980, when I was a kid and we were into, big data, and then, blockchain. It's this AI thing. Mackenzie beat me to the AI. I called it synthetic data. Blockchain. Well, we were really in the building of massive interrogative databases. I do a 10-minute speech on blockchain. By the way, it takes me 10 minutes to explain it, and half of that time is spent laughing about it. But so the reality is, and that what that did for us as a little bitty non-executive company helped us grow to a massive big business. So I am entirely into the Tobin model here. I think that, and there's one elephant-sized little problem. Most people, 99% of people, don't understand AI beyond its utility. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I say you don't have to become a technologist, a techie, but you need to learn how to use it, because the rest of the world is. So you need to know how the hell Grok or ChatGPT works, and it's wonderful. Anybody can make a perfect omelet today. It's a wonderful thing. Can you create a new perfect omelet? Oh, wait a minute now. Now we need big brains to do that. And I talk about the hierarchy of machines and people in terms of channeling the development of AI. In other words, let's try to do this for the good rather for the destruction of it. I talk much about how do you regulate AI? Ultimately, you have to, so it doesn't become destructive or self-destructive. And that, to me, is a hierarchy of machines and people, how they fit in and how they're channeled. I think that I heard a wonderful quote from somebody, I forget who it is. I didn't retain it, but somebody said, AI can write you a wonderful new newspaper column, but don't ask AI to write a prayer for you. So, there are limits to all that learning that they don't exist in Michael Tobin's brain. Okay. And there will be a hierarchy of people, thinkers, if you will, and perhaps technologists that will come up with the next iteration of AI, if you will, or allow that to grow and grow in a positive fashion. And of course, I hope and pray that the folks on top of that pyramid who drive the machines, if you will, at some point come to the realization that we cannot allow it to go from amoeba to pink elephant because it will impact way too many people negatively. So we need to be able to regulate it to be, well, it's never going to be altruistic, but it should not be damaging to the populace. We've been through that in the data world, where we came to the understanding if we don't regulate ourselves, we will be regulated out of business by the authorities. Much the same way I think AI.
I mean, it's
AI is,
interesting.
to me, I fancy myself as a businessman, a writer, and all that. I just love to have the ability to ask AI to give me a better combination word. Okay, so I wrote a set of words, a veritable intellectual Rubik's Cube. Okay, well, I happened to meet Rubik before he died in Budapest. So, okay, but nobody understood what the hell I meant. You know what? Gemini and Grok really helped me out. They gave me an alternate to these three words. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. What an incredibly interactive library that is. But I think I'd like to think that I, along with you guys and a whole million or 2 or 3 or 19 out there, are capable of independent thought. And that's what should feed the AI evolution, in my humble opinion. Michael, do not be throwing things at the camera because I am several thousand miles away from you. I'm 7,000 miles away from you. You can't hurt me.
So the one of the things that that works very, very well with AI is that one needs to talk to it like a human being, and the more you engage with it as a human being, saying please and thank you and what your feelings are and things like that, it does learn. And we are only, people say that AI doesn't have a soul, it doesn't have, but actually when a baby is born, it knows absolutely nothing, right? And it learns to be the individuals that we are simply by the years of inputs of family, friends, media, experience. And AI is doing that at a millisecond for decade ratio on a global basis rather than an individual basis. So eventually, I think AI does write your prayer, because it knows exactly your thoughts and your fears and your religion and who your God is and who your God isn't, and will write your prayer, because it will have every single exposure that you've ever had, and we'll know about every coincidence. Everything that we say is some greater God, or it will have all that as data, and it will then make the decisions on your behalf. The challenge, because we have now achieved what is called technological singularity, where the computer is more powerful than the human brain, right? We are now in the process of migrating knowledge-based AI into wisdom-based AI, and I guess somebody gave me the perfect analogy of what the difference between knowledge and wisdom was the other day. They said knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad, right? So, that's where we are now with regards to AI. It's learning not to put stuff in a fruit salad, but the rate of acceleration is so great.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Fascinated by your description of writing a prayer. I think about a conversation I had with this man. He's a really uber advisor to Fortune 100 types, and he told me what I've been saying all along. He says, it's very simple. You go in and you ask a lot of questions, and you're empathetic to your clients' issues, and you ask more questions, and you take them down the path, and then at some point it comes to you creating some input for them, which you do, and then they look at you and say, that man has got this. He's right on point. He really is. He got he knows, and then they follow. And the thing is, you know what? I just put that into the blender, and they cut, and then I gave them back exactly what they told me, and therefore I'm brilliant. The prayer is what I put in the blender over years. The blender gives it back to me, and I love it because that's me. That's absolutely right. That's me. So no, I'm not discounting the immense ability of the darn thing. I will confess to doing something for fun. When Grok first came out, I said, it is likely to be amazing. So for the last, I think maybe 3 or 4 weeks, every second day or so, I asked Grok the same exact question. I came up with something absolutely absurd, irrelevant, silly. I asked the question. And every day or two, I look at the answer. And I look at the extent to which it changes. That is astounding to me. Same question.
That's interesting.
Same question. Tell me about the efficacy of mating wallabies in the months of March in Tanzania. Now, it's just, I mean, there's only so much about mating those things in Tanzania in March, but the answer becomes astounding, and then I get really upset because I'm thinking, geez, when I asked for another word for this, well, yeah, it's in there now. They understand that I don't like that word. The Grok understands I don't like it. Now I like this word. Okay, now somehow that is an additive to mating wallabies in March. It's an astounding thing to watch that happen. So I think I need to drop Elon note saying that a couple of billion you spent on that silly computer, which is not half done yet. Not bad, dude. Not bad. Keep it up. It's kind of working, But it's to your point. Yeah, the learning part of it. Oh, and it's interesting. Isn't one of them Copilot? One of them. Maybe they all do have a feature saying, if you don't want us to learn from you, turn this off. So you don't want us to learn. I think it's a Copilot, isn't it? The features, if you don't want us to learn from your queries and your answers, turn it off.
Yeah.
Okay, well, do I dare? Will my ego allow me to say, ignore everything I said, thought about before? That computer in Lincoln, Nebraska will tell me what I think.
Yeah, and it should be your best friend, right? Because it should start to know you inside out. And, unlike offending people in the real world, you can actually offend you can say whatever you like to it, and it it's just going to go, oh, okay, that's your opinion. I've now learned a little bit more about you. And so I think, if you can get comfortable with treating it as a human being, it will really deliver very significant and enlightening outcomes. It's a huge beast, and as you're absolutely right, it only gets smarter and smarter every day.
Yeah, I listened to a really cool speech by this scientist, a tech guy out of the Hungarian Institute of Technology, and he was talking about the interaction with the AI on a personal basis. That was his thing for the day. Really smart guy, and he was talking about what you just said about how, and the interviewer said, "So do you say please and thank you? You're talking to the computer." And the man wanted to say, and he segmented his answer into utilitarian stuff. What is it I'm doing? I want a reservation. That's one thing. I want to talk about something historical. That's another. And then I want to talk about things that might be somewhat personal, in which case I write please. And when I get an answer, I say thank you. And then he says the mind-blowing things, I get a response. You're welcome. Anything else I can help you with? And then, and I also confess to reacting negatively. The first time Nathaniel said to me, I had a chat with Gemini. And I said, dude, whoa, you're talking to the computer, right? Well, the answer is it's not a computer. It's a computer. It's an Uber computer. It's really it's the single most amazing library in the history of the world, the most searchable interactive library in the history of the world. And, in the 80s, I was dragging around billions of records in a database that we were crunching through all the time. Oh my God, I can do that on my Galaxy today. So what has happened is something, and what happens to it every day. Again, I play that little game every day or 2 days. I ask the same exact questions. Okay.
That's quite funny, actually. I like that. Well, thanks, Mike.
We're generating more data on a daily basis than probably existed in the world yesterday.
Wow. Astounding, isn't it?
And so, this is why these things learn perpetually, because there's always more to learn, as humans find as well. And the more refined and considerate they can be in terms of all the knowledge, which changes every day, the more they will have an approaching wisdom. But their ability to redevelop the next generation is now greater than we did. So when you put GPUs in charge of developing the next GPU, the quantum acceleration of that development will be great.
I have one question before you wind up.
It just blew my mind.
I have one question, if I may, because I have you to ourselves, Mike, for another minute or two. Give me your number one worry about this.
Yeah,
if you have them.
Yeah, I have plenty of concerns, but I think our direction is a microcosm of what we were talking about in terms of political nature at the moment. We have a tendency to address symptoms and not causes. And if you put a loaded gun in front of a group of 30 people, in 100 years' time, no one will be hurt by that loaded gun unless someone in those 30 people chose to pick it up and use it. So we have technology we can call it tools. We can, nuclear is another dynamic, right? We have amazing technology, which we can call weapons, tools, all those things. And then we have good and bad actors. And we do not, just because we've got this tremendous tool, doesn't change the fact that there are extremely bad actors out there that will use it for bad outcomes. So when the internet started, 70% of internet traffic was porn, right? And guess what? When AI got popular, it was deep fake porn that started to be pervasive early on. And so you're going to get bad actors with whatever technology and whatever tools you put in front of people. And our challenge is to understand why people are bad actors and try to resolve that, rather than put so many constraints and brackets around the weapon or the tool that is there for all sorts of good, simply because we're addressing the symptom and not the cause.
Yeah, well, it's an Americanism on one side of the spectrum. You know, guns don't kill people. People kill kill people.
Absolutely.
It's simplistic, but it does get to the root of the thing in a hurry, doesn't it?
It does. Absolutely does.
But thank you. I think that's a
Thank
that's
you.
a clear worldview of things. I couldn't agree more.
Thank you. It's been a really good conversation. Really enjoyed it. Thanks very much, both of you. And if you want to grab Monday Influencer, go to mondayinfluencer.com and you'll get lots more of great content and our weekly digest. Thanks.
Thanks very much for listening to Influential Visions. Please make sure you share this episode with your friends and business connections. And don't forget to drop us a review wherever you listen. Thanks.